Hello, I'm Eve Jackson in Paris. Coming up on ENCORE. Weiwei at large in Alcatraz. The Chinese artist and activist pays tribute to political prisoners in his new exhibition. The screen siren Brigitte Bardot turns 80. And Malkovich. John Malkovich is not being John Malkovich, but Marilyn Monroe, Salvador Dali and Alfred Hitchcock in a brilliant new photo series. Thanks for joining us. A highly anticipated exhibition at America's most famous prison by one of China's most prolific contemporary artists is opening this weekend. At large, Weiwei on Alcatraz is a tribute to political prisoners. The artist won't be at the opening, though, as the Chinese government has banned him from leaving his country. Jade Barker reports.
It once held the most difficult and dangerous criminals in America and is one of the most famous and visited former prisons in the world. But now Alcatraz is being used to highlight the plight of political prisoners through contemporary art. And who better to put on such an exhibition than Chinese dissident Ai Weiwei?
He thought it was a very appropriate site for his work because of not only the history of detainment here, but also the history of protest.
No stranger to incarceration himself, Ai Weiwei has continued to use his art to criticize repression since he was jailed for 3 months in 2011 on charges of tax evasion. Still banned from leaving China, Ai had to entrust the installation of this exhibition to 90 collaborators, with works built in China and shipped over. From 1.2 million Lego pieces portraying individuals that have been imprisoned or exiled, such as whistleblower Edward Snowden, to symbols of freedom, the exhibition draws on both the artist's political beliefs and Alcatraz's complex history.
Ai Weiwei opens up the deeper story of what incarceration means, what freedom of expression means, what are human rights, and what is political imprisonment.
It's the first exhibition of its kind at Alcatraz, which already sees more than 1.5 million visitors per year. Apart from the cost of the ferry, the exhibition is free, unlike the artist behind it.
We're now to South Africa, and when you think of the traditional Nutcracker ballet, snowflakes and Christmas probably spring to mind. A new performance by the Joburg Ballet has replaced the winter theme with sun and sand. The Nutcracker reimagined has kept the original music by Tchaikovsky and storyline from France's choreographer Marius Petipa, but everything else is very different, as Ruben Easy reports.
Gumboot dancing was invented by black South African miners who would stamp and slap their boots in order to communicate without their boss's understanding. In the Nutcracker reimagined, the Joburg Ballet has retained Tchaikovsky's famous score, but the Russian dance scene has incorporated elements of this earthier South African equivalent, and Clara no longer travels to the Kingdom of Sweets, but through the Kalahari Desert.
Nutcracker in South Africa during summertime, trying to pretend that it's winter outside, is a little bit ridiculous. So the idea was to create a South African Nutcracker that would tell the normal story of the Nutcracker, but in a South African setting and in summer.
Not only are there no snowflakes or tutus in this take on the Christmassy tale, but the Sugar Plum Fairy is instead played by a sangoma, or traditional healer. And the desert is home to ostriches.
It's been a challenge in that there are a lot of dancers that are not from South Africa, and obviously done very much on the classical Nutcracker, so they look at us as if we totally have lost the plot.
But the dancers seem to have taken to the challenge. The ballet is still based on classical movements, but with a modern twist. And for the first time, this year's production also includes acrobatics.
The most challenging for me is probably the new circus stuff that we're doing. It's quite difficult, some of the aerial tricks we're doing and stuff. It requires a lot of upper body strength, which we have, but not to that extent.
I think it's more dangerous. The moves are more dangerous and it's more sculptured, more than rather being it classical. So it's exciting. It's quick.
The Joburg Ballet hopes the production will help it reach out to new audiences with more black and young people. All without, of course, losing the magic which makes the Nutcracker such a timeless favourite.
back here in Paris, Fashion Week is underway. French designer Barbara Bouy has wowed audiences with her collection. It was a fusion of contemporary urban and classical Buddhist styling. Bouy says she was balancing unusual and foreign details with familiar shapes and forms.
I wanted to express a mix of culture from European, Occidental, even urban hip-hop, and the culture of a forest country like Indian, and to mix it with something completely different.
A sex icon and a rebel, a pin-up girl and a rule breaker. Brigitte Bardot celebrates her 80th birthday this Sunday. Desired by men and envied by women, she was seen by many as the ultimate symbol of women's liberation in the 1950s. Kate Moody looks back at Bardot's rise to stardom.
Ça a été un grand rayon de soleil dans ma jeunesse.
Femme fatale.
C'était vraiment la femme idéale à l'époque.
She had an innocent baby doll face and pigtails when she made her on-screen debut in 1952, but Brigitte Bardot was about to blossom. She broke from her traditional Catholic parents at the age of 18 to marry director Roger Vadim, the first of her 4 husbands. Discovered as a fresh-faced, fully covered model, as here on the right, Bardot secured more and more acting roles through the early 1950s, appearing alongside some of the era's biggest stars.
Brigitte Bardot.
International fame came with the 1956 hit And God Created Woman. Her sensual dance transfixed the world, as well as her co-star, Jean-Louis Trintignant, with whom she had a much publicized affair.
The women of today are indebted to her for their independence, their liberty, their equality, because she incarnated more than anyone else, and for the whole planet, the free, independent woman, free to express her sexuality as a man would.
And express it she did, with skin-bearing and daring photo shoots and film roles. Not all were successes, though the blonde bombshell herself always left an impression.
Je choisis mes films pas toujours très bien, sur des coups de tête ou de cœur.
Another now iconic scene came in the 1963 film Contempt by New Wave visionary Jean-Luc Godard. Another glimpse of her famous hourglass figure and carefree attitude.
Oui.
C'était le symbole du sexe. C'est la plus belle qu'on a eue.
Oui.
Mais elle a mal vieilli, malheureusement.
Bardot ended her acting career more than 40 years ago, turning instead to animal rights activism. She's continued to court controversy with her outspoken, right-leaning political views, unable or perhaps unwilling to leave the spotlight.
Well, now to another legendary French actress and singer. Miss Getz was the highest paid female entertainer in the world and an icon of the early 20th century. Now the cabaret star is back at the Casino of Paris, or at least her act is. Singers and dancers are recreating one of her first hits in a show that pays homage to the period and the legend herself. Belle Lupton reports.
The queen of the roaring 20s. The spirit of Miss Getz is back at the theatre where she once reigned supreme, the Casino of Paris. Some 30 artists will recreate her first sparkling cabaret show, which debuted in the aftermath of the First World War, when Europe was ready to party. She wasn't the most beautiful or even the most talented, but Miss Getz captivated Paris with her energy, flamboyance and risque routines.
Miss Getz loved the stage more than anything. It was her life. Everything was about the show from morning to night. She would have worked 35 hours a day if she could have. She didn't always sing in perfect tune, but she had an energy, a presence that made up for it.
Suggestive, but not vulgar. Regal, but of the people. Mistinguett created a fantasy world of pearls and feathers to showcase her voice and her troupe.
She was the first real cabaret star and made the style popular. She wanted to put on shows with spectacular entrances, boys, girls, and of course lots of feathers.
Marvellous.
It was a great atmosphere, I really enjoyed it.
It really brings the 1930s alive.
The most popular French entertainer of her time, Mistinguett even had her legs insured for 500,000 francs. A big sum for a big star, whose legacy continues to shine for new generations.
Well, just before we go, John Malkovich is famous for his ability to be any character. At this time, he's outdone himself. The actor and director has been transformed into blonde bombshell Marilyn Monroe and a host of other well-known icons in a series of photographs by Sandro Miller called Malkovich, 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 homage to photographic masters. And we're going to leave you with that. Remember our website, we're also on Twitter and Facebook. There's more news coming up on France 24 after this.